Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Short Gaming Telecom video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped over the past 24 or so hours. I'm going to start things out with the rumoured specifications of the RTX 2070 Ti, which sees not just a clock speed boost for the core, but also additional CUDA cores as well. So the vanilla RTX 2070 has 2,304 CUDA cores, as well as a boost frequency of 1620 or 1710, depending on either the Founders Edition card or not. Obviously AIBs though will also fluctuate in their clock speed for the boost frequency. However, the RTX 2070 Ti increases the number of CUDA cores. It raises it to 2,560 CUDA cores, but also, just as importantly, we see a core speed bump as well, with a boost frequency of 1770 megahertz, which is actually quite a significant increase in frequency. This isn't quite up to the 2,944 CUDA cores that we see inside the RTX 2080, but is a substantial increase nevertheless. So the only caveat here though is that the memory clock frequency remains the same as we currently have. So a 256-bit memory bus, 8 GB of memory, with the memory clocked at 14 Gbps, which means that the memory bandwidth between the Ti and the regular vanilla RTX 2070 is identical. That's not necessarily a red flag in and of itself. After all, the RTX 2080 uses the same memory configuration as the RTX 2070, which quite honestly was kind of an eyebrow raise for me when Nvidia first announced those specifications. What does cause concern though is that the rumour has it that we will see a refresh of the RTX 20 series with faster memory. This would increase memory bandwidth up to 512 gigabytes per second, and the rumour has it that we will see this for the 2070, the 2080, as well as the RTX 2060. There's a couple of theories then that we can have regarding these rumours. The first is that these rumours are just inaccurate concerning the specifications of the RTX 2070 Ti, or at least partially inaccurate, and we will see the cards at launch with 16 Gbps. Frankly, I do feel that having 2,560 CUDA cores for the RTX 2080 Ti is a very logical number. It's not actually anything more than you would guess. I think most people, if they had to throw a dart into the number of CUDA cores that a Ti variant would contain, they would have gone for 2560. And also, given what we've heard about the improvements to the yields of the Turing dies, seeing a 10-15% clock speed boost also makes sense. So the other possibility is that Nvidia are not going to be increasing the clock frequencies across any of the SKUs at all for the graphics cards. So we will not see a refresh with faster memory. However, we may see a price decrease, which is another thing that we've heard quite consistently regarding the RTX 20 series. The third possibility is that we will not see memory speeds increase for all of the SKUs that we've heard about. So we may only see it, for example, for the RTX 2080 graphics card and the RTX 2070, and also now the 2070 Ti will remain at 14 Gbps. Which one is it? Who the heck knows? Hopefully we learn more over the next couple of days. After all, apparently we're going to learn more at E3. And I suspect a lot of the decisions regarding pricing are still up in the air right now for both companies, both AMD and Nvidia. They're probably going to wait until the very last minute to make a decision regarding the performance of these cards. But what I can tell you is that the RTX 2070 at times is sometimes still needing faster memory. I'm not saying that it's completely and utterly bandwidth starved, but there are definitely tests that you can do by simply overclocking the memory that, yeah, performance does increase, which does basically mean that releasing a model with faster memory would definitely net additional performance. This piece of news is also an article, so you can go ahead and check it out, which of course is linked in the very description of this video. So I've got a question for you. How much graphics card performance do you want out of your GPU, and how much memory do you want in your GPU? Well, AMD have just made a rather impressive announcement, and it sees a dual Vega graphics solution packed onto one PCB with up to 64 gigabytes of memory. As you can imagine, this GPU is not cheap, but the level of performance here is absolutely ridiculous. The card in question is the Radeon Vega II Duo, which is a dual Vega 20 graphics card. There is a couple of small differences from the Radeon 7. The first of which is we see an additional 4 compute units. So this is 64 compute units, unlike the 60 which the Radeon 7 launches with. We also see more memory as well. There are 4 stacks of high bandwidth memory too, meaning each GPU core has access up to 32 gigabytes of memory, which means that if you go for the highest end SKU, that's 8,192 stream processors over 128 CUs, each core having 64 compute units of its own, and 64 gigabytes total of high bandwidth memory too. This board will gobble up to 475 watts of energies, and each of the 2 cores will speak to one another over AMD's Infinity Link. This is capable of carrying up to 84 gigabytes per second of memory data. So what level of performance can we expect here? Well, the maximum 32-bit floating performance is 14.1 teraflops per GPU. So that means 28.2 teraflops, which is, well, a lot. Let's just be honest, it's a lot of performance. Whereas these cards, however, are going to be offered for the new Apple Mac Pro, and it is going to be retailing at around $35,000, but that's just estimated pricing. So far anyway, the price has not been confirmed by Apple. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that is just not enough performance for me. That's just not enough. I mean, what is this? Are you trying to run like Doom 1? How's that enough? Well, you can even configure the new MacBook for up to 2 times this number of graphics cards. So if you were to plug in 2 of these graphics cards, then you could have 128 gigabytes of high bandwidth memory too, and 56.8 teraflops of FP32 compute performance, or that doubles of course if you're using half precision compute, so that's 112.8 teraflops of half precision compute performance, which is just just absolutely mind-blowing. With E3 2019 just around the corner, we're expecting to learn a lot of details concerning Microsoft's next Xbox, and I'm curious to hear in the comments what you are hoping from Microsoft for the next Xbox. Like Phil Spencer has said on Twitter that we're going to be seeing an awful lot of new games being shown at E3. However, there's also Sony, and with the PlayStation 5 we know an awful lot more compared to Microsoft. The PlayStation 5 has been confirmed by Sony to be using an AMD Zen 2 CPU. Though we don't have clock speed information, we do know it's 8 cores, 16 threads. The rumour has it that we will see the CPU run at 3200 MHz, but that is not confirmed. An AMD Navi-based GPU, also known as RDNA. The performance of this GPU has not been confirmed, but the rumours tell us it's between the 12 and 14 T-flop range, with 12 T-flops being the more common rumour. And of course a very fast SSD. In terms of SSD, actually, we've learned quite an awful lot. A couple of demos from Sony themselves show absolutely incredible loading speed and streaming capabilities of the drive, and supposedly we also have a couple of DDR4 modules which are dedicated to caching of the SSD. We have learned that the PlayStation 5 will have backwards compatibility, but we've actually learned recently from a patent that if a developer goes in and tweaks the code, they can actually get more performance out of legacy titles. The performance of an application on a new device may be closely matched the performance of the same application on a legacy device by tuning the operating parameters of the new device. That's what the patent says. In other words, what it's telling us here is that an application, i.e. the game, running on the PlayStation 5 will closely match the performance of the same title running on the PlayStation 5 So, and then it continues by saying that when the PlayStation 5 notices a PS4 title load, it will change things such as the clock frequency of the CPU, the GPU, and other characteristics of the hardware. The patent reads as following: this process may be repeated until the operating parameters are set optimally for the application on the new system. To further optimize, one can adjust the execution of the new hardware to see if the application can run faster on the new hardware without causing it to fail. Those last few sentences are key. What they seem to be aimed at is, of course, developers. So in other words, a developer can go in, and let's say that you have a developer like Naughty Dog, and they want to tweak The Last of Us Remastered for the PlayStation 5. Well, they could theoretically go in and start tweaking the characteristics of how the console is emulating the PS4 hardware, and they could be like, well, actually, if we slightly increase the speed here and we slightly increase the speed there, the game is actually not an unplayable mess, because obviously when you're developing titles for consoles, you're generally doing it with fixed hardware in mind. So it's quite interesting that this is going to be a thing. I am reading this though that the titles will still play without developers needing to do much. So in other words, you can just simply put a game in and play them, but if a developer does decide to go in and try to tweak for maximum performance, theoretically the games will run better. With Google Stadia being an imminent release, both Sony and Microsoft are well aware that their competitor with streaming doesn't really need to worry about backwards compatibility. It's going to be a consistent, continuous service. So providing a game isn't removed from streaming, which is a concern in and of itself, in theory you should be able to play whatever titles are available indefinitely, forever. So Sony to have backwards compatibility is very important for the PlayStation 5, and I think this is one of the things that Microsoft did get right with the Xbox One. Yes, it's still not 100% for every game, without any question. There are still titles that you wish were on backwards compatibility, whether it's an Xbox 360 or an Xbox One title, but Microsoft made a very wise decision to embrace backwards compatibility for the current generation of systems. So hopefully they will continue to really push that forward even further with the Xbox Scarlet. And frankly, I imagine that that's a lock-in. I would be shocked if they didn't. So it'll be very interesting to see what exactly we find out from Sony and Microsoft over the next several months. With all of that said though, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then the normal stuff: like, share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.